Welcome to District 61's online education program. I'm your presenter, Scott Minnis, and today we'll be looking at Building a Brilliant Speech, lessons from Toastmasters International Speech Contest. This workshop is for speakers who have some experience in the Toastmasters program and are looking to build their range of abilities as they grow their public speaking skills. Just learning the process for how an international speech contest style speech is created will help you build your abilities and possibilities as a speaker, whether you actually participate in the contest or just view it as a keen observer. This will help you understand what strong speech creation skills are and develop a practice for improving and enjoying what those skills can bring you. The ideal eventually is to meld your passions and interests with the communication talents that you're developing at Toastmasters. I like this quote from Chris Anderson, who's the head of TED Talks. If you're invited to go on a journey with an inspired dreamer, that's an invitation that you can never refuse. For me, that sums up the experience of a great international speech contest speech. It's about a speaker who has tapped into his or her passions, values, and experiences, learned the rich techniques for conveying them, and understands the audience and is inspiring and enriching to listen to. Learning to deliver a powerful speech is about enriching your own journey as well, opening our eyes to greater possibilities and positive change. It gives us a unique opportunity to explore and express our own ideas and deepest interests. And those are exactly the techniques that we'll be looking at today. So what will you learn from an international speech contest speech? Well, first you'll learn how to deeply engage an audience with powerful storytelling techniques and range of emotion. Next, you'll learn how to use your voice effectively, vocal variety, wordplay, word power, dynamic delivery techniques that enhance a message. You'll learn how to tap into your life passions and stories as a source of positive, inspiring speaking. And you'll learn how to practice effective, natural delivery and gestures that enhance your message. And finally, I hope that you'll learn how to develop an enjoyment of the possibilities. A quick summary of the workshop, just so you know what's ahead. And also, this takes quite a long time. I think the whole presentation is about 45 minutes total. So feel free to take a pause or a break at any point, especially there is a lot of information to absorb. So anyway, take it slow. First, I'll give you a quick tour of what the International Speech Contest is, and we'll look at traits of favorite speakers. Next, we'll look at creating a solid foundation for speech creation, the technique of crafting a focused, memorable speech around a simple structure, and then adding the rich descriptive layer, creating audience connection through sensory descriptions, character values, word power, and storytelling techniques. Next, we'll look at building your skills by practicing the separate components of speaking, no matter what level you're at. And finally, we'll look at some great resources for doing a deeper dive into powerful speaking techniques, if that's what you'd like to do. So international speech contest speeches are typically about an enriching journey of learning and personal experience. And in many ways, it brings all of our Toastmasters training together in a 5 to 7 minute speech, which is why it's such an interesting thing to study. And the best way to understand the value of the contest and writing these types of speeches is to look closely at the judging form. So the judging criteria covers every important aspect of speaking that we trained for and that we're evaluated on in Toastmasters. Everything from the logical structure of the speech, how well the speaker connects his or her ideas to the audience, how the speaker moves and physically expresses the themes of the speech, the effective use of voice and vocal variety, the speaker's presence on the stage, and how well language and words are used to support the themes and the stories of the speech effectively. So this brings a very important point for you to understand, especially if you're observing or judging. In the contest, it is not necessarily the best speech that wins. It is the speech that best fulfills the judging criteria that wins. You see this more at the club and area level contests where a speaker gives a pretty solid speech and perhaps doesn't move or gesture much, so they can't be given good marks in that category. Another speech is also quite good, but the speaker moves well to enhance their message and wins overall because they scored a higher total mark by meeting the overall criteria better. Now, if that seems a little bit wacky to you, keep in mind that the purpose of this contest is to help speakers learn to use all aspects of delivering a great speech in one single speech. So that's what gets rewarded. It's quite a challenging thing to do, especially all in less than 7 minutes and 30 seconds. To better understand the criteria, it's best to read the details on the second page of the judging form and understand what they mean. For example, speech development. So speech development, I'll just read it out, is the way that the speaker puts ideas together so the audience can understand them. The speech is structured around a purpose, and this structure must include an opening, body, and conclusion. A good speech immediately engages the audience's attention and then moves forward towards a significant conclusion. This development of the speech structure is supported by relevant examples and illustrations, facts and figures, delivered with such smoothness that they blend into the framework of the speech to present the audience with a unified whole. So that's a mouthful, but there's some pretty important aspects to this. A good judge knows the different components, key components for speech development, and gives marks based on each of them. So, if you just pull a few out of here, the speech structure is built around a purpose. It has an opening, body, conclusion. It immediately engages the audience's attention, and it finishes up with a significant conclusion. So if any of those aspects aren't met in a speech, then a good judge will mark that speaker down for not meeting all of those components in that definition. So as a judge, you'd want to read through and think about each criteria point that will give you a better understanding of how all 8 of these important aspects are needed to create a stellar speech and give you some ideas of the areas that you may want to improve on. Sorry, I said as a judge, but I also mean really as a speaker or people who are developing their skills. I highly recommend going on YouTube and searching for world champions of public speaking and watch those speeches with this judging criteria in mind. Discover what it is that they do so well. And after you become familiar with the criteria for building a powerful speech, the next important step is to know the process for speech creation. There is an introspection phase where you think about the ideas and the values that are important to you and that you'll want to weave into a speech. Next is to understand how to create a simple structure and idea flow, and finally, how to add the rich supportive details and the audience connection opportunities to that simple structure. The first step in exploring your values is to spend some time thinking about what traits your favorite speakers have. These will become helpful guideposts as you build your skills and will help you to understand and appreciate those qualities when you see them and when you practice them. So here's my short list of favorites. Authenticity in a natural, genuine manner. Those type of speeches or those type of speakers have the tone of a friendly, personal conversation. Next, they are an engaging storyteller. They know how to convey ideas in a very memorable way. They create focus, clarity, and insight, especially around complex ideas. They understand their audience and they know how to create a meaningful connection with them. And they are a combination of being good-natured, insightful, and wise. They open up our eyes to fresh possibilities. To sum it up in an easier way, again, we'll go back to Chris Anderson, the head of TED, because he recommends that you be warm, be real, and be you. The audience responds deeply to authenticity, character strengths, vulnerability, and inspired personal stories and values. A wonderful Toastmasters example to study is Dhananjaya Hediarachi, the 2014 world champion of public speaking. His manner of delivery and an eye-opening message met every aspect of the judging criteria beautifully. So after you study the judging form, I highly recommend that you analyze this speech and watch carefully how he created and choreographed the speech around every aspect of that criteria. Again, you can find it on YouTube. And a lot of TED Talks have these traits as well and are great to learn from. If you want to see a powerful example of authenticity, insight, wisdom, good nature, watch Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk on The Price of Shame. It is an extraordinary experience and one of the best talks that I've ever seen. So the same judging criteria from the International Speech Contest, of course, can be used to analyze TED Talks. The next exercise I recommend is to spend some time thinking about what personal values and experiences are important to you. We don't typically spend much time thinking about these things, but great speakers do. It's a wonderful source of insight and of speech material. So the standard list of character strengths, you can Google it or just email me and I'll send it to you. I'll remind you at the end of the presentation and share my email address. So the way to use the character strengths list is to read through it and highlight the strengths that are most appealing to you. Read through the list and think about those moments in your life when you were in awe or witnessed a great kindness or a life lesson or struggle that was resolved through learning and persistence. Motivational stories and speeches are about the human journey seen through character strengths and virtues. And there are so many possibilities here, and even the act of contemplating them is a fascinating experience. Take the time to be introspective about these aspects of your life. Communicating on these issues is a very positive and much needed aspect of what we do. So just a quick summary here of these great traits. Wisdom and knowledge, creativity, curiosity, open-mindedness, love of learning, bravery, persistence, integrity, humanity, love, kindness, justice, citizenship and social responsibility, temperance, which is around forgiveness, mercy, humility, or transcendence, which is all about a deep appreciation for beauty and excellence, gratitude, hope, and a sense of purpose. So these are wonderful, lofty possibilities as speech themes as well. So what you're looking at now is my personal summary. So I recommend that you create your own, and from that summary, think of your life experiences that best represent one or some of these important character strengths. Think about people in your life who are examples of them and where you saw them in action and what it taught you. Think about the stories from your life that best exemplify those experiences of your priority character strengths. Think about the experiences in life that have inspired you the most, or think about topics that you have a deep interest in and how your character strengths list ties to those deep interests. This is a tremendous way to build speech ideas around your most inspiring values and stories. This creates a strong foundation for an international speech contest style speech. So spend some thoughtful time, uninterrupted time here, and just give this exercise a try. See what you come up with. Once you've arrived at some strong ideas, create a simple outline of some of your favorite ideas. To do that, determine the main theme for your speech, or what you'd like the audience to take away from the speech, and what your best supporting stories and points are for that main theme. Practice doing these simple outlines for any speech idea, really. They don't take long, and they help you to put your best supporting points and stories in an order that supports your main idea. Keep in mind, too, that the wondrous is embedded in the ordinary, meaning that audiences love everyday life and personal stories that support a speech theme. When you get good at this stage, it can be a lot of fun too. You're creating full speech idea flows without going into the time-consuming details yet. So this will allow you to create full speech concepts without taking a lot of time, and will teach you to envision the possibilities of a whole speech with just a simple outline. So here's an example of the speech structure of Danajaya's speech. His main speech theme was discover what makes you special. The audience takeaway was to see what is special in yourself and in others, which he summed up with the line, I see something in you, a highly memorable line that he repeated a few times through the speech. And then you see his list of 4 supporting stories in an optimal order. The first story described a crisis in his life, and the next 3 stories described how he learned to see his abilities, possibilities, and potential, and eventually to resolve that crisis. So when you create a simple structure like this, you get a nice overview of how your stories best support your main theme and your audience takeaway, and what order maybe those supporting ideas should be in for the best audience connection and strongest overall effect. It's a lot easier to play around and edit at this stage than to try to write a whole speech and then try to figure out which stories work best and what order they should be in. To be honest with you, that doesn't work very well. It can be quite stressful and takes a much longer time to write. Also, please note that we haven't even looked at the introduction and conclusion yet, because those come later at the next stage of the speech creation. So to recap, this simple outline has only the main idea of the speech, the audience takeaway, and the best supporting ideas that you have for the theme. The next step then is to write down in point form the details of your supporting ideas and stories. These now further define the content of the body of the speech. So don't worry if you write too much here, that's okay. You can edit down later. And once that's done, then you evolve your summary to include ideas for the introduction and conclusion. So you do this after clarifying the body of the speech further so that you have a much better idea of what you're actually introducing and concluding. A big mistake that many rookie writers make is they write the introduction first, and then they spend all their time trying to make the body points fit that. You can create a lot of frustration that way. So now you have a clear speech overview of all the elements. First, you have the main idea, the audience takeaway, the 3 most important supporting points around the main idea, details for those points, the introduction, which eventually will be a powerful hook or story to the main message, and the conclusion, which will be a summary of the main message and a memorable takeaway. And then finally, of course, you want to write the title, and the title should tantalize the audience as you walk up to the podium. The beauty of this complete speech summary is that it provides the overall structure and focus needed to then weave the rich writing techniques around, which comes next. So now you get to add in the rich descriptive layer. And this is about creating audience connection through sensory descriptions, word power, and storytelling techniques, gestures, and movement. Now that you know how to generate ideas and create a powerful, simple structure, it's time to learn techniques for connecting and building a deep connection with your audience. So it is in our DNA to be addicted to stories and their life lessons. How many great books, movies, or presentations have you been wowed by and seen the world in a different light as a result? So this diagram represents the standard speech structure of introduction, body points of ascending importance, and a conclusion. The ascending line represents creating an initial connection, building that audience connection to a peak magic moment, then concluding with a memorable takeaway and conclusion. So to quickly recap, you have here the opening, which creates the connection between the speaker and the audience and sets up the theme of the speech. The build, which are the body points and stories that deepen the connection between the speaker and the audience, while the speech theme is being woven around the storyline. The peak, which is a powerful resolution moment or scene in the speech that the audience will relate to deeply. And the conclusion, which is a summary of the speech meaning and a memorable takeaway. So if that's a bit confusing, you can think of it this way. A speech, in a way, should be like a great piece of music. It has to be catchy right from the start and get our emotions going. Have a rhythm, richness, connection, and feeling to the main content, and conclude in an elevated, uplifted way. It needs to make us feel like we are better off for having heard it, and the tune stays playing in our head and affects us long after it's over. So I'll give you a quick tour of the whole thing in detail. First is creating the initial connection. The audience connects to the speaker first, then connects to the message. So you create this hook by being personal, telling a personal story related to your theme. In manner, your genuineness and authenticity are vital for this initial audience connection. And set the stage for your speech theme. Describe the conflict or complication to be solved, or create a compelling backdrop for the theme. And generate anticipation and curiosity. Every good introduction does that. Get the audience to be curious about your storyline to come. The next stage is the build. Typically, an international speech is a conflict needing to be resolved, or a journey of learning that leads to greater understanding. To deepen the audience's connection, be simple, be memorable, be personal, create a range of emotion, do the unexpected, but most of all, take your audience on a compelling journey around your speech theme. Get the audience to think, what'll happen next? How will this get resolved? Build their interest. Create unexpected surprise and delight moments. And build anticipation, curiosity, emotional connection. Next is the peak. The build culminates in a peak scene or a peak story. And the peak typically has a powerful moment of insight, revelation, and resolution of the speech's conflict and the learning journey. Strong sensory descriptions are important here for the audience to sense the scene and visualize it in their minds. Have the audience relate deeply to the moment and picture the scene in their mind. Create a powerful memory for the audience through your descriptions and delivery. These are referred to in speaking terms as the magic moments. Figure out a way to invite the audience right into your peak scene. Help them imagine that they are there. Create a memorable resolution and open the audience's eyes to fresh points of view, greater possibilities, and wise insight. And finally, you have the conclusion or the takeaway. And this ties to the powerful moment of resolution or deep insight around the speech theme. It summarizes the speech and what the audience needs to remember about the theme, and it inspires us to something greater. So going back to Danajaya's speech, his conclusion is a wonderful example and well worth studying. It goes something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife. So that one sentence summarizes the whole speech. And next he says, I was broken and I've been broken many times in my life, but the people in my life were available or were able to reach into the trash can and make me whole again. If it was up to me, I would have never been able to do that. And this is why you have great people in your life. No matter how broke, how lost, or how broken you've become, they can piece you back together. So that part summarizes what he learned and reinforces the speech theme. And his final sentence goes like this. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at you, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. That last line is the takeaway of the theme and inspires us to something greater. It was delivered with a lot of positive energy. And for me, this is a masterful conclusion, well worth studying. The next part of this workshop is how to practice the craft. So for those of you who are looking to build your speaking skills and recognize from the judging criteria that you may need to work on a few areas, I'll take you through an example of how to do just that. You could really pick any area of the judging criteria and do this exact same thing that I'm about to describe. But because our time is limited, I'll just focus on one. A classic area for improvement is voice and vocal technique to enhance the connection of the message. So you may have heard this in an evaluation. You should work on your vocal variety. Okay, but how do you do that? So my suggestion is to become a student of the area that you want to build your skills in. Between experienced Toastmasters members, the education program, and a little bit of research, there are several areas that will benefit and enhance your vocal abilities. So here are some examples. Since you want to work on your vocal variety, diction, wordplay, and animated delivery, I recommend that you start with children's books. Read children's books out loud and with gusto. Ham it up. Act out the characters. Add drama to the reading. Be descriptive and animated in your voice. And most importantly, have some fun doing it. From this, you will learn diction and animated expression, wordplay and rhythm, exaggeration, story logic, and rich descriptions. This is a great technique for developing quickly. Read out loud as if you had to impress a whole group of kids sitting right in front of you. This will also help you get past taking the learning too seriously. So here are two of my favorites: The Remarkable Farkle McBride by John Lithgow and The Old Man Who Loved Cheese by Garrison Keillor. Here's an example passage from Farkle McBride. He went boom, bash, clang-a-clash, all the clamor he could provide, tinkly, bing-bong, bumpity-crash, the remarkable Farkle McBride. So that practice creates wonderful expressive wordplay, rhythm, exaggeration, and expression, all important vocal storytelling skills. And when you're ready to move on beyond that, then you can interpret perhaps parts of screenplays, which are easy to find on the internet. Just pick a favorite movie that you have and go and search for the screenplay. And you can read these out loud and act out the mood and feel of the piece. And this is also an excellent training for handling dialogue, creating exaggeration and animation, vocal delivery. So for me, I read a key scene from the screenplay for the movie Shine. I think it was a late 1990s movie, 1997, I believe. And had to read all of the character parts out loud with the same gusto and hamming it up as those children's stories. So this was quite a challenge and really unique learning. Another opportunity is to listen to this brilliant TED Talk on how to speak so that people want to listen by vocal coach Julian Treasure. The voice exercises in it alone are worth practicing, and the advice is very insightful. He goes into all kinds of aspects of voice and using voice in a way that help to better express your message. I highly recommend watching it and playing around with the concepts. And the last exercise for building vocal techniques is to read great speeches that somebody else wrote and read them out loud. And even try your hand at a favorite World Championship speech or two. So I did Randy Harvey's Fat Dad speech as an interpretive reading at the club, and I tell you, it was a blast. I learned about the structure, rhythm, and vocal techniques of a high-level speech. And as I said, we could go into any aspect of the judging criteria and create a similar rewarding learning process. How you do the research and find good examples and teachers on how to build your skills in any area of speaking. So one other interesting thing I learned from studying Randy Harvey is how he writes his speeches. He wrote his speeches with complete notes about movement, gestures, facial expressions, and stage position at any point in the speech. So in this slide, you can see them down the left-hand side. And anything that was happening that had to synchronize with the dialogue was choreographed down the left-hand side. So it's a pretty clever way to choreograph movement with your speech meaning. I'd like to leave you with a few other resources in case you decide to do a deeper dive into this type of speech writing and preparation. First, I recommend that you follow favorite speakers, especially TED Talks or World Championship speakers, and analyze their speeches to see what you like about them so much. This is one of my personal favorites, Brene Brown. She's wonderful to watch and an incredible storyteller. Also, there's a lot of speaker training out there. Sometimes this can be expensive, but not necessarily. And sometimes it's worth the cost. But I recommend starting with Craig Valentine, who's another world champion of public speaking and a great storyteller. His courses and ideas can easily be found at his website. And if you don't want to spend money, there's a lot of free content there as well to explore. There's also this book worth reading on how to win the World Championship of Public Speaking by Jeremy Donovan. It's actually pretty good, and it provides a nice overview of each aspect of the judging criteria. This is the index for the book right here. And here's your takeaway challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to go to YouTube, pick a favorite World Championship speech, watch it a few times, and analyze it from each aspect of the judging criteria. Try to figure out what makes it such a rich and rewarding speech in each of the judging areas. The best advice I can give you is to constantly build your abilities and savor the experiences on that learning path. Don't go into a contest with the desire to win it, but rather go into it with the desire to give a great speech and learn as much as you can. I promise you, you will be amazed at the change you can create that way. So to finish up, here's a quick summary of what we covered today and your next steps. First, know the judging criteria. It's a very helpful guide, both for judges, of course, but as you develop your speaking skills, every single aspect that's important is covered there. Second, understand the traits of your favorite speakers. Spend some quality time learning about your own values and character strengths and write about your experiences that best exemplify them. And next, we talked about learning how to create simple outlines for speech ideas. This is a wonderful approach to speech writing and very important for you to learn. Then learn how to weave the rich descriptions and audience connections through each stage of your speech. And finally, learn how to dive into any part of giving a speech. Become a student of it, similar to the example that we covered on building your vocal range. And now I promised you I'd remind you, don't forget to email me for the list of character strengths and virtues. And most of all, good luck and enjoy the learning. Email me if you have any questions or comments.